Hey everybody, Sean from Media Assault here, and it is time for episode 3 in my Countdown to Star Trek Into Darkness series. This, of course, being the third entry, we will take a look, or I will take a look, at Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. This is the Blu-ray cover. That is the back of the Blu-ray. This, of course, is from the 6-film set on Blu-ray. And this movie is hard to describe without talking about plot elements from Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. So if you have not seen Star Trek II and you don't want it spoiled, don't watch the rest of this video, because I'm going to reveal something that, you know, is not a particularly well-kept secret anymore, but it may be a shock to some of those people out there who yet have not seen the second one. So I'll give you a second. Okay. Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, obviously picks up after Star Trek II, and at the end of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, Spock dies, giving his life to help save the crew of the Enterprise and, of course, the ship itself by entering a room that is full of radiation, and then he passes away. But not before passing his life force, or I believe it's called a katra, to Dr. McCoy. And the majority of the time, the running time in The Search for Spock, is reuniting Spock's katra with Spock's body, which basically his life essence can be put back into his body, according to Vulcan legend. Whether or not it will actually work, of course, is unknown even to the Vulcans, because they have not done it in ages. The movie was directed by Leonard Nimoy, who apparently was rather re-energized by playing Spock in Star Trek II, and he demanded that Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, be directed by him. And apparently they were a little reluctant because they thought he didn't like the character, because he had been a little bit outspoken before the motion picture, and I think before Star Trek II came out, that he was kind of tired of being typecast or stereotyped as a Vulcan, as Mr. Spock. But I guess I read this. I obviously don't know Leonard Nimoy, but he apparently was re-energized by playing the role in Star Trek II, kind of got back into it, and wanted to kind of have his hand in the creation of the movie that will eventually allow Spock to come back. I'm not spoiling anything there. If you know that the other movies exist with Spock, you know he eventually comes back. The only problem with this movie is that because it is so one note in its focus, the fact that we have to reunite Spock's body with Spock's katra, the rest of the movie is really kind of threadbare. Again, we have another Star Trek film without a solid villain. Khan was fantastic in Star Trek II. This one, we have a Klingon who I don't know is ever named specifically, played by Christopher Lloyd, in a rather energetic and exuberant performance, but he is no Ricardo Montalban. He does not provide that villainous, evil performance or character that we really are either rooting against or rooting for. He's just a stock Klingon who's, like I said, nameless, for crying out loud. For at least, I don't remember his name, so if it was mentioned, it was pretty damn forgettable. So you don't have that. So the movie really falls on the shoulders of the characters and our love for them, or at least what I would presume the filmmakers hoped we felt about them, which would be, you know, obvious affection. You know, going now into the third film of this series, and of course the TV series and everything. It's really that interest in what's going to happen next that kept me involved in this film. I never was bored by it, but there really is not a lot going on, and it really feels like they're stretching this out to almost an extended episode of the TV series. It tries to avoid the overly serious tone of the first film with a little bit of humor. Unfortunately, most of the humor, whether it's a result of just bad editing or bad timing or bad scripting, I'm not really sure, but most of the humor falls flat, with the exception of DeForest Kelley as Dr. McCoy. He has by far been the most consistently humorous in this series so far. I'm assuming, or I'm pretty sure that continues all the way to the 6th film, but I can't remember, so that's why I'm rewatching this. Production-wise, the special effects on this film and the look of the film in general is noticeably improved from Star Trek II. The special effects, I guess they had more time to work on them because the sequel was actually greenlit within a day of the release of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. They knew they were going to be making a third one really quickly, so they could spend a lot more pre-production time working on the special effects. And it really shows because the effect shots in Star Trek III are much more complex than they were in Star Trek II, and there is little, if any, stock footage used from the first or second film in this one, at least that I could see. And by no means am I an expert, but it looked like everything was fresh for the most part. So that was noticeable. The movie looked better too, and I'm sure that has to do with something technical involving the cameras or the way it was photographed or something. But even on Blu-ray, the first two films looked good. This one looks considerably better. Whether that be the cameras or the transfer of the print or what, I'm not sure. But 3 head and shoulders above 1, and quite a bit better than 2 in terms of the way it looks and the way it was shot, I think. But really, this, for a movie that doesn't really have that compelling of a story to tell, but yet an important story, it definitely fills a gap in this 3-film arc that started with Star Trek II. So it's a necessary film. But I wonder if this could have been accomplished. It wouldn't have been accomplished with the perceived grandeur, I think, that they tried to put into this film, and the solemnness of the whole Katra thing of, you know, reuniting Spock's essence with his body. Maybe they couldn't have given it that kind of gravity that they were able to do in this film, but by and large, 95 minutes worth of that is not, I don't know, like I said, everything kind of falls onto the shoulders of the characters and our perceived affection towards them and seeing what happens to them to propel this film along, and it's necessary but unnecessary. It's, I don't know. Rating the film, I'd give it a 5.5 out of 10. It is interesting. It's not hard to watch. It's easy to get through, but at the end of the film, you just kind of go, okay. And even at the end, the very end, before the credits roll, it just says, and the adventure continues. Like, okay, we got that out of the way, let's get to the next one. As if this was just a necessary evil to propel the film or the series along that is more done out of an obligation to the characters than an actual desire to tell this story, if that makes any sense. Well, that almost sounded profound. So there you go, 5.5 out of 10 for Star Trek III. While it was the first time I've seen it since 1984, I went to the drive-in to see it with my stepfather and my mom. I don't see myself watching this again anytime soon. Once every, 30 years, it's enough. And that's a shame, because it's really not that bad of a film. It's just, it's flawed, but it's not horrible. So hence my rather average rating of it. By far my least favorite film of the original 6 films so far. I'm glad I watched it again, though. I had forgotten 99% of it. And it was worth watching again, but like I said, I won't be revisiting it anytime soon. So there you go. But the good thing is that, like I said, it does fill that gap in the story arc between 2 and 4, and 4 is one of my favorite films in the series, and I'm looking forward to watching that and bringing you a review of it next week. So tune back in, or whatever you'd like to call it, when you watch a video on my channel, and come back for episode 4 of Countdown to Star Trek Into Darkness, which will be, of course, Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. And thanks again for watching. Thanks again to Planet Shannon TV for coming up with this idea of doing the countdown to the Star Trek films. I will put a link to her channel below. Check her out. I know she's already uploaded her Search for Spock review. I've not watched it yet, so I'm going to do that right after I start uploading mine. And we've got, I believe, and I didn't check the name, but I believe his name is Gray51. He has joined in, and he has started counting down with Shannon and I, so I will put a link to his channel below as well. So thanks again for watching, everybody. As always, feel free to rate, comment, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe. Thanks.